Chelsea drop points as they lose their away game against Manchester City, with Reading making a massive comeback in a very important relegation battle against Brighton. So, let's talk about it. This was a very, very fun and eventful weekend of football. We had the NWSL finally kick things off. There was a Clásico in Liga F, which saw Barcelona take a 1-0 win. Bayern also edged Wolfsburg in the Frauen-Bundesliga to now lead the table, and we also had some very, very exciting games in the WSL. The main headline, however, is Chelsea losing their away game to Manchester City, which now completely makes that title race super open, super wide, and super stressful for fans to keep watching now. There's only 3 points separating the top 4, with obviously Chelsea and Arsenal having a game in hand compared to the Manchester teams. Coming into this game, Manchester City were coming off a loss from Aston Villa, which knocked them out of the FA Cup. Chelsea were coming in after a 1-0 win in their Champions League campaign over Lyon, and so a fair amount of momentum, wanting to keep that. For City, obviously this was a home game. They also probably wanted to bounce back after that disappointing loss to Villa. Chelsea are missing Millie Bright from what looked like to be kind of a knee injury in that Lyon game. They're obviously still missing Pernille Harder as well as Frank Kirby, so 3 massive names, specifically Millie Bright, which we will get to in a little bit, other than the exclusion of Millie Bright in that starting 11, though Chelsea came unchanged, so obviously Eriksson was in the spot for Millie Bright, as that was the replacement in the Lyon game originally. They were playing a 4 in the back, which did change occasionally throughout the game, but it was the 4 in the back that was simply unable to handle what Manchester City was bringing, specifically the fullbacks Jess Carter and Maren Mjelde. It's no secret that City have some of their most dangerous plays on the side. Obviously, you cannot ignore how dangerous Bunny Shaw is and how dangerous she has been this season for them so far. Hasegawa played more of a deeper role, which was quite interesting to see, and actually, very surprisingly, absolutely nailed that positioning. She's more of an attacking player. She's more of that skillful Japanese kind of Asian beautiful football that you love to see, but her role today was massive in holding back kind of that midfield, assuring that there's stability and assuring that the Laura Coombs and Angadal were able to go forward as naturally as they wanted. Her footwork is just so good and massive, and a real kind of dark horse asset for this new Manchester City midfield. Obviously a very different one than it was in the past few seasons. There's not many players that can deal with the Chelsea press, but Hasegawa did it brilliantly, and she did it like it was just another day in the office for her. Kelly and Hemp were absolutely terrorizing Chelsea's fullbacks. They were struggling to get and win any duels anytime there was a one-on-one positioning. Often they would have to double or triple mark, and even when that was happening, it opened a lot of other spaces. Bunny Shaw is a player that you definitely cannot get lazy for marking, and you obviously do not want to leave her open, and so that was taking place in a lot of the Chelsea players, and so you had to worry about Bunny Shaw in the middle of the pitch, but you also had to deal with Lauren Hemp and Kelly, which are the battles that you were losing, because neither Carter or Mjelde were able to handle the battles that they had. Erin Cubbard was cutting in a lot deeper than she usually would. So whenever they would have some kind of possession or they're trying to recycle possession, there wasn't necessarily many players that you could connect into the middle and move it forward, which is also when you see that massive miss for Millie Bright. Not only is she an absolute tank in the back, I've previously talked about her plenty on how good and rigid she is in the back. How much her game has evolved over the last few years, sometimes maybe known as kind of like that individual error player prone, but over the last season or two, she really has, she's an undroppable player, and her numbers do show that. Not only is she an absolutely great defender, but if you watch any of these Chelsea goals this season, any competition, often Millie Bright is actually very much involved in it. She's either recovering possession, she's either connecting some of these balls, or she's either the one sending that long ball, having it from their half go into a very dangerous position of the other opposition's. That is exactly where they missed her today. There were not many balls able to be converted down to Guro Reiten or down to Kerr. There's nobody able to send that long ball to, even if there's a body missing in the midfield, which was the case, like Erin Cubbard, dropping down. Because you're missing that middleman, you want a long ball to avoid that, right? But there was nobody able to really send that long ball. So not only were you missing Millie Bright's defensive abilities, but you're missing these long balls that are usually so dangerous and usually cause some kind of chaos for other opposition. Both goals, you give the players way too much space. I mean, Lauren Hemp, you cannot give her that much space. Same thing with Philippa Angadal. I mean, you give her that much space, she's going to shoot. Out of the box, she's quite dangerous. Can't give Genevieve Charles coming on for Engel and Lauren James at 35 minutes. I'm not sure if Lauren James was the right person to take off, considering you're already hit with a fair amount of attacking injuries. To me, even though they didn't have much possession, it did look like Lauren James was engaging and moving the ball forward. So taking her off for me didn't make much sense, and I'm not sure if that really changed how much they were able to move the ball forward. Definitely added some resistance and definitely added a good reaction from the team to obviously not concede after that 2-0 mark. But I'm not sure if Lauren James was the right player to take off at 35 minutes. But this was not a case of Chelsea not being up to par. This was also a case of Manchester City being able to execute what they do best, which is be very threatening on the wings, aggressive in the middle. Hasegawa's role obviously very important in the midfield, and very rigid and stable in the back. Defensively, they looked solid. Maybe Morgan, I'm still not so convinced seeing her in that fullback position, but overall for them, they looked good. They looked aggressive. They didn't look too scared to kind of, go into the pockets and put Chelsea under the pressure. And we've seen this happen throughout the season. There's plenty of games where Chelsea maybe were not on their A game, but they will punish you. Whereas for City this time around, they dealt with those moments very well. And when they went forward, they made sure they took their chances. And ultimately, that's how you win these razor thin games. Post-match interview, Emma Hayes did say that, hey, you know what, I don't want to talk badly about any of our players. I'm proud of how we responded. I'm proud of our second half, but it's one too many games happening, and then that's exactly what happens when you're in one too many competitions. This is quite an odd comment considering that she's won a treble. She's been in the Champions League final. She has been in this environment of, pushing players to the limit, pushing players where they're able to play 2 or 3 games a week. And I'm not advocating for that. That's definitely not the best kind of scheduling to have a fit squad. But Emma Hayes is equipped to deal with that in terms of experience and skills. Yes, she's hit with injury players, but I'm not sure if that's the right response to come out and say to the media, well, you know what, too many games, we're in too many competitions. I don't know what's being said in that locker room, but that's definitely not the message you want to be sending out to your players, because you don't want them to get too foolish or too kind of give away a game because we're in too many competitions. Let me just focus on one competition. That's kind of what makes you that top dog team, right? You're able to win the FA, the Conti Cup, the Champions League, put in a good battle, and make a title race for your league. They obviously have their second leg against Lyon. There's no traveling involved for this one. A few more days to rest up. So for them, definitely wanting to make sure they come out a little bit more rejuvenated. On the other side of Manchester United were able to beat West Ham in a very fun, eventful game at Old Trafford. It was goalless at the half, but in that second half, they were able to get a penalty, which Katie Zellum converted. Once you have that first goal go in, kind of that momentum does shift towards you just like that. Lucia Garcia comes in, puts in 2, and it's 4-0. It wasn't just Old Trafford, though, that hosted a very eventful WSL game. So did Goodison Park by having the Merseyside derby take place there for the first time ever. Over 30,000 people in attendance. It was a breaking attendance for Everton. A 1-1 game that was a quite controversial one, purely because Liverpool did have a second goal come in that was ruled off for what looked like a push from the keeper. Watching the replay, watching it from different angles, I don't necessarily agree it should have been cancelled. To me, it looked like regular contact when there's a corner coming in. Any kind of corner, you're going to have players obviously boxed in and they're pushing each other and they're tugging each other. That's what corner contact is. And that, to me, looked like corner contact. So for Liverpool, I'm sure they'd be extremely disappointed to walk away not having won, obviously the Merseyside derby. Gabby George had one of those, was it a cross, was it a shot goals? But for a player like her to have scored at Goodison Park on a Merseyside derby on the milestone that she was on, you gotta feel pretty good for a player like herself. It was a massively entertaining game. It kicked off on a Friday night. To be able to draw in numbers like that and to be able to host such a fun, eventful game, maybe Friday night kickoffs should be more of a thing now. There was also another derby in the WSL, which is the North London derby. Tottenham still unable to win a North London derby and put a W against Arsenal in their record. Arsenal able to convert their chances. Stina looking like the dangerous Stina that I remember from the Euros or the World Cup. Caitlin Ford also having a brace of her own. Caitlin Ford has now scored 7 goals against Spurs. That's the second most behind Viviana Miedema, which she has 8 goals. The Aussie just seems to have a lot of fun in a North London derby. That probably seems like her favorite fixture, really. Really impressive press work by Arsenal. Pelova, I thought, was extremely technical and extremely aggressive. I'm not sure she got the props that she deserved in that game, but for me, starting the game that she did and having the impact that she did, I think is very good, positive news for Arsenal that they have recruited this what looks like a very dynamite players. I'm obviously on a Palova hype train and have been since the Euros, but I think when you're able to see her convert that potential and have that aggressive press that she did and really be so technical when she's on the ball, it's really, really fun to see. Speaking of press, I was disappointed to see Spurs not execute a press very nicely. They would be pressing Leah Williamson and Lotte Wubben-Moy, but they would stop the press when it goes back to Sabrina D'Angelo. The Canadian was also able to get her WSL debut, unable to keep a clean sheet as she did concede a penalty from England. But I don't think Tottenham actually expected Arsenal to come out with D'Angelo. D'Angelo is quite a different player to Zinsberger in terms of how she positions herself in the back and how she distributes the ball. A lot more stable, a lot more calm, and a little bit more kind of compact in the middle of the goal rather than on the side when she is trying to collect the ball from the defenders. But she almost never got pressed by the Spurs players, and I wonder if this is something that threw them off. But when you're Tottenham, and this is a North London derby, and obviously they're trying to put some wins together, they have been dragged into that relegation battle. You have to be aggressive. You have to show some kind of, you know what, I'm willing to commit. I'm willing to press. There was none of that. I'm not sure the substitutions were necessarily the right one. Definitely killed any momentum that they had. Drew Spence looked like she was overwhelmed and overloaded in that midfield, which again, if your teammates aren't really pressing, it makes it just so much harder to be able to move forward and actually kind of regain any kind of possession. A lot of planning for them, but for Arsenal, definitely take this win. They see that they're able to convert chances. They see that they're able to finish. They're able to move forward. That's going to be huge going into this Bayern Munich game now midweek at the Emirates. It's a must-win game for them. So the Gooners are definitely very happy. But talking about relegation battle, we saw Brighton take on Reading. Both teams stuck in that 11th and 12th spot, and both teams have conceded the most amount of goals in the WSL. So for them, I was more so interested in seeing not so much who's going to score, but who could possibly keep a clean sheet. Which, to answer that question, neither of them kept a clean sheet. Brighton started out very strong, Sarri able to get a brace within the 15 minutes. Reading responded quite well to that, moving forward and almost having more possession actually in their attacking bit. Now, usually when a first half ends 2-0, you can kind of give the benefit of the doubt to Brighton and be like, you know, even if they concede one, they're 2 goals up. So they can't necessarily lose a 2-goal lead just like that. But because this is a relegation battle and because these are the teams that have conceded the most amount of goals, you didn't know what you had coming in the second half, and that's exactly what happened. Emma Harry's getting her first goals of the season, 2 in 10 minutes, coming on as an impact sub. And just before you know it, it's 2-2. So Brighton went from almost kind of going clear of that relegation zone because they do have 2 games in hand to now being dragged and now to only taking a point away. So for them, they're going to be massively disappointed by this. For Reading, even though it is only a point and even though they are still dragged in that relegation battle and even though they don't have these 2 games in hand, that's not a negative result to take away. To know that you're able to put in 2 goals within the 10 minutes and to know that you're able to have that reaction moving forward, that's going to come very, very handy, especially when you're in those kind of tight games against the Leicesters, against the Villa, against those teams that you're maybe trying to nick a point or, not 2, but a point or 3 off. Leicester City remain at the bottom of the table. In fact, they had a pretty bad 5-0 loss. Villa looking as dangerous as ever. I'm so rooting for them to go and nick that FA Cup, but for them, it's good to keep that momentum going. Kenza Dolly and Rachel Daly, just a deadly duo. So for the WSL table, not only is it such a great tight competition at the top, but so it is at the bottom. It's going to come down to the wire for who's going to get relegated, but it's also going to come down to the wire of who's going to win the title, and it's also going to come down to the wire of who is going to clinch that 3rd spot, or who, in other words, is going to miss out on those top. You look at any of these teams, they're in great contention to not only win the league, but get a Champions League spot. And the reality is, not all of them are going to get Champions League spot. And I think that is what makes it so interesting that you literally cannot miss a game. Super fun fixtures coming up. A lot of these reverse fixtures are taking place. Arsenal are going to take on Manchester City very, very soon. They lost that first fixture. Definitely want to avenge that. For City, they're trying to keep that momentum. Shortly after, they've got Manchester United. Also for Arsenal, they lost that initial fixture, trying to get that win, and these are the games you have to win. These are the games that are must wins for every single team, and it's just that they're all competing against each other. So for us fans, we get to enjoy it, but we get to enjoy it in a very stressful manner. As always, let me know what you thought of these games. Did you catch the El Clasico? Did you catch the Wolfsburg Bayern? what was fun? What did you enjoy? Let me hear your thoughts on the City-Chelsea game. And as always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. Also, all episodes are out on Spotify and Apple Music, so go check those out as well and give me a follow down there. Woohoo!